Have you ever watched a film so outrageous you wondered if the director was daring you to look away? That's the thrill of Italian sci-fi. It never played it safe. It pushed boundaries with wild ideas, neon visuals, and stories that bent reality. Some made audiences laugh, others left them unsettled, but all shocked in their own way. And in this list, you'll discover 10 films that prove Italian cinema never held back its imagination. The Humanoid, 1979. Imagine walking into a theater expecting a slick Italian homage to Star Wars, and instead getting Richard Kiel, yes, the towering actor who played Jaws in the Bond films, wandering through a plot about mind control laser duels and an evil empire. That's The Humanoid. Directed by Aldo Lotto, the movie is a fever dream space opera that didn't just wear its influences on its sleeve, it practically screamed them through a megaphone. Audiences at the time were baffled. Critics labeled it a cheap imitation, yet there's something fascinating about how boldly it leaned into its mashup of ideas. The set designs feel like a psychedelic crossover between Roman architecture and Flash Gordon pulp. Kiel's presence alone gives it a surreal edge. His hulking frame in those futuristic costumes is both intimidating and oddly charming. But here's the kicker. The Humanoid wasn't just cash grab cinema, it actually achieved cult status. Fans today celebrate it for its unpolished charm, its synth-heavy soundtrack, and the sheer nerve of trying to rival George Lucas on a fraction of the budget. Watching it now feels like stumbling into an alternate reality where spaghetti Western directors built spaceships instead of saloons. In the end, this film shocked audiences, not because it was polished, but because it dared to push itself so far over the top. Love it or laugh at it. The Humanoid carved its spot in Italian sci-fi history as the fearless outsider that never apologized for its chaos. 2019, After the Fall of New York, 1983. Picture New York reduced to a nuclear wasteland, gangs ruling the streets, and humanity's survival hinging on finding one last fertile woman. That's the outrageous premise of 2019, After the Fall of New York. Directed by Sergio Martino, this film is pure post-apocalyptic pulp, mixing Mad Max grit with Escape from New York attitude. When it premiered, audiences weren't just surprised, they were stunned by how far Italian cinema would go to reimagine a crumbling future. The story follows Parsifal, a hardened mercenary, sent on a near-impossible mission, rescue and protect the future of mankind. But this isn't a clean hero's journey. The landscapes are bleak, filled with irradiated survivors, freakish mutations, and violent gangs that look like they stepped out of a dystopian fashion show. What set it apart was its audacity. Where American films might hint at decay, this Italian production plunged headfirst into it. Viewers in the 80s were split. Some dismissed it as another knockoff, but others couldn't deny its raw energy. The film's set pieces, burned-out cars, crumbling skyscrapers, and endless rubble captured a sense of hopelessness that felt shockingly real, especially in the height of Cold War anxiety. And then there's the tone. Part deadly serious, part knowingly absurd, a balance only Italian exploitation could pull off. Today, 2019, After the Fall of New York is remembered less for its budget and more for its nerve. It shocked audiences by showing a future that was dirty, unglamorous, and unnervingly plausible. It's the kind of movie that doesn't just predict doom, it makes you believe you're already living in it. Hands of Steel, 1986. If you've ever wondered what would happen if the Terminator got into an arm wrestling match at a desert truck stop, Hands of Steel has the answer. Directed by Sergio Martino, this is the kind of film that feels like it was dreamed up during a heat wave and then shot straight from the subconscious. The setup? A cyborg assassin sent to eliminate an environmental scientist, only to end up battling for his humanity in a dusty roadside bar. The lead, Daniel Green, isn't just a muscle-bound android. He's a conflicted creation torn between cold programming and flashes of compassion. But the real showstopper? The arm wrestling matches. Sweaty, tense, and absurdly overblown, they turn what could have been a throwaway subplot into the film's beating heart. Every match feels like a matter of life and death, staged with the same seriousness Hollywood reserves for its biggest blockbusters. Audiences in the mid-80s were floored. Some laughed, some gasped, but no one walked out unmoved. The neon lighting, the synth soundtrack, and the low-budget grit combined to create something unforgettable. Critics dismissed it as a cheap ripoff, but cult audiences saw the artistry hidden in the chaos. What shocked viewers most was not just the violence or the cyborg theme, but the sheer audacity of mixing genres, science fiction action, and sports drama in one wild ride. Decades later, Hands of Steel stands tall as a perfect slice of Italian pulp that dared to weld philosophy and arm wrestling together in the same sweaty package. The Visitor, 1979. Imagine a cosmic battle involving telekinetic children, alien overseers, and John Huston wandering around as if he just walked in from another movie. That's The Visitor, a kaleidoscopic mashup that somehow combines the Omen Close Encounters of the Third Kind and pure Italian surrealism. Directed by Giulio Paradisi, this film doesn't follow a straight line. It spirals, leaps, and often crashes headfirst into strange territory. A young girl with psychic powers becomes the focal point of a conflict between otherworldly forces, and the results are as confusing as they are mesmerizing. There are basketball sequences, supernatural bird attacks, and bizarre cosmic landscapes that make you wonder whether you've fallen asleep mid-film and started dreaming. When it first released, audiences were shocked by its unapologetic weirdness. American critics were baffled, calling it incomprehensible. Italian audiences didn't quite know what to make of it either, but slowly it built a reputation. Quentin Tarantino and other genre devotees have since championed it as a one-of-a-kind experience. The shock value here doesn't come from gore or spectacle, but from the film's willingness to break every storytelling rule. Nothing is explained neatly, nothing fits into a box, and that unpredictability is exactly why it lingers in the mind. The Visitor shocked audiences, not by imitating Hollywood, but by refusing to play by its rules. Watching it today still feels like getting pulled into a dream you can't quite wake from, and honestly, that's its magic. Contamination, 1980. If you thought Italian directors wouldn't dare riff on alien, think again. Luigi Cozzi's Contamination didn't just borrow the concept of extraterrestrial life, it blew it wide open, quite literally. The plot centers around strange pods shipped from South America that contain a deadly organism. When the pods burst, victims don't just collapse, they explode. Audiences weren't just shocked, they were rattled by the sheer spectacle. What makes the film unforgettable isn't only the gore, but its atmosphere. Cozzi fills every scene with dread, using sterile labs, shadowy warehouses, and pulsing sound effects to make you feel like danger is creeping just outside the frame. The score, composed by Goblin, the legendary Italian prog rock band, adds another layer of menace. It's relentless pulsing like a heartbeat that refuses to let you relax. At the time, critics dismissed it as a low-grade knockoff, but audiences couldn't forget the imagery. Those pods lined up in grim storage rooms became the stuff of nightmares. The sense of contamination spreading everywhere felt eerily timely in an era full of paranoia about invisible threats. What shocked audiences wasn't just the explosions, it was the way the film combined pulp thrills with genuine unease. It dared to ask, what if the danger doesn't come from outer space, but from our own greed and recklessness? Contamination left viewers shaken, proving that Italian sci-fi could create shocks, not just with spectacle, but with atmosphere that got under your skin and stayed there. Wild Wild Planet, 1966. Step into a future where slick spies wear mod suits, cities stretch into the cosmos, and criminals are literally shrinking people down to stash them away. That's the bizarre premise of Wild Wild Planet, directed by Antonio Margheriti. It's part of his Gamma 1 series, a collection of Italian space adventures that fused pulp comic book energy with spy thriller swagger. The film follows Commander Mike Halstead as he uncovers a sinister plot by a corporation that kidnaps people using miniaturization technology. If that sounds outlandish, it's because it is, but that's also why audiences in the 60s couldn't believe their eyes. The visuals are half science fiction, half swinging 60s runway show with shiny costumes, pop art color schemes, and wild gadgets that look like they were dreamed up after flipping through a toy catalog. For viewers in its era, Wild Wild Planet was shocking in its bold blend of genres. Italian cinema didn't just imitate American spy films or Hollywood sci-fi, it mashed them together into something loud, colorful, and completely unpredictable. Audiences weren't used to seeing such out-there concepts, presented with such a straight face. Was it camp? Was it serious? That tension made it unforgettable. Looking back, the film has gained cult admiration for its creativity and sheer audacity. It didn't just shock by showing a future full of ray guns and space stations. It shocked by suggesting that corporations and their experiments were more dangerous than aliens themselves. That idea has aged remarkably well, giving Wild Wild Planet a staying power far beyond its budget. War Between the Planets, 1966. If there's one thing Antonio Margheriti loved, it was cosmic disaster. War Between the Planets takes his fascination with celestial doom and cranks it up with the threat of a rogue planet colliding with Earth. For audiences in the mid-60s, that was enough to keep them glued to their seats, jaws slack with a mix of wonder and disbelief. The story follows Commander Rod Jackson and his team as they race against time to investigate a mysterious planet tearing through the solar system, causing catastrophic earthquakes and tidal waves back on Earth. What really shocked audiences wasn't just the scale of destruction, but the bleakness of the scenario. Unlike many American counterparts that reassured viewers with heroics, this film leaned into the sense of helplessness. Nature itself was the villain. The miniature effects and cosmic visuals, though clearly low budget, had a haunting charm. Margheriti used model smoke and inventive lighting to conjure entire worlds under threat. And while some viewers chuckled at the obvious trickery, others were left shaken by the apocalyptic imagery. The film tapped into Cold War anxieties when the idea of sudden annihilation felt all too real. What set War Between the Planets apart was its willingness to stare straight at catastrophe without blinking. It shocked audiences by stripping away fantasy and showing a human race on the brink, battling forces far bigger than themselves. For all its pulp trappings, it delivered an eerily timeless message. Sometimes, the scariest enemy is the one we can't control. Planet of the Vampires, 1965. Few Italian sci-fi films have left a visual impact as strong as Mario Bava's Planet of the Vampires. Released in 1965, this eerie space horror stunned audiences with its nightmarish landscapes, saturated colors, and a story that felt like it came from the darkest corners of a pulp magazine. It's often cited as a major influence on Ridley Scott's Alien, and for good reason. The plot follows two spacecrafts that land on a mysterious planet after receiving a distress signal. Once there, the crews encounter a malevolent force that begins possessing their bodies, turning crewmates against one another. Audiences at the time were shaken by the atmosphere, fog-choked sets, bizarre alien ruins, and a creeping sense of dread. The costumes, with their tight leather suits, only added to the surreal, otherworldly aesthetic. What shocked viewers most was the sheer mood Bava created. While Hollywood leaned on clean, futuristic visions, Planet of the Vampires painted space as a place of terror and death. The idea that your own companions could turn into enemies under an alien influence hit harder than any monster could. It was psychological gothic and cosmic all at once. Critics initially shrugged it off as cheap genre fare, but audiences remembered those visuals. Over the years, its reputation has grown with filmmakers and fans alike, praising it as one of the most important Italian contributions to science fiction. The shock of Planet of the Vampires wasn't just in its scares, it was in the realization that space, for all its wonder, could also be pure nightmare fuel. The 10th Victim, 1965. What if hunting people for sport became a televised game show? That's the outlandish premise of The 10th Victim, a film that shocked 60s audiences with its satirical take on entertainment celebrity and violence as spectacle. Directed by Elio Petri and starring Ursula Andress alongside Marcello Mastroianni, it's a story where contestants kill or be killed, all while corporate sponsors and TV cameras keep score. The film's glossy surface is what first grabs you: futuristic sets, wild costumes, and Andress strutting through Rome in an outfit that's part bikini, part weaponized fashion statement. It looked glamorous, but beneath the shine was a cynical edge. Petri wasn't just making a stylish thriller, he was holding up a mirror to a world increasingly obsessed with media hype and celebrity culture. Audiences in 1965 were floored. Some thought it was too outrageous. Others recognized it as sharp social commentary. The idea of turning violence into a public spectacle seemed absurd then, but today, in an era of reality, shows shock value media and influencer culture, it feels disturbingly prophetic. What shocked audiences wasn't just the concept, but how unapologetically fun the film made it look. The camera lingers on every stylish kill, every glamorous moment, daring you to laugh while you squirm. That uneasy laughter is what has kept the 10th victim alive in film history. It's more than pulp entertainment, it's a warning dressed up in glitter. They have changed their face. 1971. On the surface, they have changed. Their face doesn't look like your typical sci-fi. There are no spaceships, no mutants, no laser battles. But what it does offer is something even more chilling, a vision of corporate power as the true monster. Directed by Corrado Farina, this little-known gem presents a story where a young man is lured into a job at a powerful car company, only to discover that its wealthy owner has made a pact to live forever at the expense of others. Audiences in the early 70s weren't prepared for this kind of allegory. Instead of cosmic battles, they got eerie silence, unsettling boardrooms, and a creeping sense that the real danger was hiding in plain sight in offices and corporations, in the systems that controlled daily life. The shock came not from spectacle, but from the slow realization that the film was pointing its finger at the very society watching it. The movie's visuals are subdued, almost minimalist, but that makes its message even more haunting. It dares to say, the future isn't being stolen by aliens, it's being signed away in contracts and sealed behind closed doors. Critics brushed it off at the time, but cult fans later recognized it as one of the most radical pieces of Italian sci-fi ever made. What shocked audiences wasn't just the story, but the boldness of suggesting that the enemy of humanity could be its own greed. They have changed. Their face is proof that science fiction doesn't always need special effects. It needs ideas sharp enough to cut. And that wraps up 10 Italian sci-fi films that didn't just play it safe, they shocked, dazzled, and left audiences reeling. From neon chaos to eerie allegories, they proved the genre was never afraid to take risks. Which one blew your mind the most? Let me know in the comments. Hit that subscribe button for more, and remember, the strangest stories are often the ones that stick.